welcome to Scream Therapy, Chainsaw Jerry, Allen Danziger, the one and only from the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974.
You are correct. Yeah. I'm glad I'm still above ground at this point, and I'm not drooling or in diapers for that matter. I mean,
You've worked in both horror and mental health. What do you think horror really does for people emotionally?
I think it gives folks a chance to safely get scared and then have a release, knowing that it's not real, and they're going to go home and they're going to be happy. It's almost like when you have a nightmare, and you wake up and you're okay.
What do you think it says about you that you have worked in horror films and worked in mental health?
Well, I think it's just happenstance. It wasn't that I set out to do that. I never trained as an actor. And if you read some of the reviews of me in Chainsaw, I've said that you'll see why. One guy referred to me as this 30-year-old disco stew looking dude, and I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. He was referencing me to Disco Stew in The Simpsons.
Oh my goodness!
So
I don't remember that character.
I'm a meme in some ways. So it's what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
We've lost a lot of the heavy hitters, as I refer to them.
Yeah, Marilyn
Gunner played
Burns,
Leatherface, and he really is
Gunnar
the
Hansen.
prototype. He is the real deal.
Yeah.
And the funny part of it is he was such an intelligent, funny, and bright guy. And here he's playing this,
right,
mentally challenged,
adult,
gigantic,
crazy adult
whatever.
Wearing people's skin for faces.
And I think he went to the state school for the mentally challenged, to just see how people move and how they talk. For his role,
Wow, that's really interesting. Obviously, you are the perfect guest for what we're doing here because you've been in one of the most iconic horror films ever. And you also went on to work, or you already were pursuing a career in mental health, which is just interesting. How did you find yourself getting cast in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but already working in the mental health field?
Well, as I said, I was in social work, and I was doing work in East Austin, kind of organizing poor people, starting a welfare rights organization. And there was a young couple by the name of David and Amy, and Toby was shooting a movie about them and about this mystical ghost-like presence in their house. And so they asked if they can shoot a scene with them coming over to my house and talking about, social work and what we were doing. And they kept adding scenes for me to do. And at the time I was married, my son is in the movie. He's like 8 months old. I have a parrot. I mean, it was just bizarre. But they kept adding scenes with me. And at the time, Sharon, my wife, she was making the wedding dress for Amy. And they just kept adding scene after scene after scene.
And this was Eggshells, right? This was
Eggshells,
Toby's
which came out in
movie. Yeah.
1969. And then nobody saw that movie.
Was that a horror movie or
no? It was like what I refer to as a hippy dippy kind of psychedelic type of deal.
Okay.
But in that movie, and I've said this since before, there's a scene where Kim Hinkle, who wrote Chainsaw, is reading poetry to me. And honestly, it's gibberish. I don't know what the hell he's saying. And I'm looking around like, how do I get out of this situation? And that's where I say,
are you talking to me?
And so I said that line 8 years before Robert De Niro said that.
Love it.
and to this day, I've been looking for somebody that could take that on, pro bono, Sonny Bono, just plain Bono, anything, to get my props on it. But it's not going to happen. So I'm moving on. But
I still love that social work helped bring you to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. But after Eggshells came out, nobody saw it. 4 years, lapse. And then I get a call, Alan, we're doing this movie. We'd like you to play this character, which is kind of like a wiseacre, character. So I said, well, let me read the script. I took the script home and I was just enthralled. I mean, it was just so bizarre. But there was a lot of humor in it. a lot of the humor is my own lines and stuff like that.
You're talking
So
about Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And they
So
were really
where were
nice.
you at this point in your life when you got approached with, hey, it's Toby, I'm assuming, that reached out to you and said, hey, I've got this movie.
I don't even remember who called me. I was doing social work.
Okay, so you were
I was
in
doing
your
yeah, and I was doing it. This is in the summertime, July. I mean, it's brutally hot.
So it
And
must have been what, 1970?
73. We shot it in 1973.
Okay.
And so I was running a camp for kids that were socially disadvantaged and stuff like that. So they worked around my schedule because, we were doing canoe trips and rafting and whatnot. And so they worked around my schedule, and they would pick me up in a travel trailer and take me out to where we were shooting. And one of the best things about that movie was meeting John Henry Falk. I don't know if you know about him, but he was just a raconteur, and I just thought he was just an incredibly wonderful guy. And so to meet him and to hear some of his stories, that made the movie even. It was just that extra thing that made it so great.
What role did he play in Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
He's in the cemetery scene.
That's what I was thinking.
And said, that's your girlfriend over there. He just says something, like one or two lines.
Go talk to those guys. They'll know where your granddaddy. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So you're got your master's degrees at this point, 2 master's degrees.
I got a master's in social psychology, and then I met a professor who took a liking to me, and he said, Alan, why don't you go into social work? And he said, I can help you, get a stipend or something. So that's what I did. I ended up working for the welfare department, and unfortunately, they didn't like that I was organizing people to get off of welfare, and so they fired me. I ended up going, and I don't think I've ever told anybody, before the Hobby Commission. And as a joke, I said to my wife at the time, we're going to have to go on welfare for helping people get off of welfare.
Oh, man.
and so that's a whole other story. But
so that's where you are in life, and that's when you got approached with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
When they approached you with it, you said you read the script and you thought, wow, this is really bizarre, but you knew you wanted to do it immediately. Is that right?
I mean, it's a once in a lifetime to be in a movie. Most people don't, and here, this movie has been so iconic that after 50 years, I say, I took my 15 minutes of fame and stretched it to over 50 years, and it's even bigger than ever. And
is
I refer
amazing.
to myself, I refer to myself as a discount, a Kmart discount star, but when people find out who I am and whatnot, it's just, they're just so nice, and they a smile comes on their face.
Yeah.
If they've not seen the movie, if they've just heard about it, but once you find out, just a big smile comes out on folks' face.
And I love that. We're going to touch on how you've met generations of fans, definitely. But let's go back to, you get this opportunity. There's no way at the time that any of you guys knew that it was going to become what it became. What did you think was going to happen with this?
Nothing. I didn't think it was going to come out, because they were changing scenes every other day. They were stoned half the time, So, I mean, and then toward the end of the movie, they were stoned a lot of the time. People were throwing up. I mean, there were rotting bones, rotting meat. I was lucky in that I'm only in that house to get whacked, So I didn't spend a lot of time. But as I said, all the Febreze in the nation couldn't take the stench out of what Gunnar was smelling like after 6-8 weeks in that same costume.
You said he wore that same costume every day.
Because if he took it off, it would fall apart. They didn't have didn't have 10 masks or whatnot like they do today. So.
How long did it take to film it? Like a couple of months?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Okay. 6 weeks. It's like July 1973 in Texas. Right?
Yeah. And then about a year in editing. And as I've said, to me, in the editing is when that movie really took shape.
Came together. Yeah.
Warren Scarron, who started the film commission, came up with the title. The original title, I think, was Etchies or stalking Leatherface, something like that.
I read that it
He
was head
came up-
cheese. Yeah, I read that somewhere.
And the
Okay.
title was brilliant. You know, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Massacre. Yeah.
That just struck a genius.
It's
And that,
iconic.
and then the opening scroll with John Larroquette. You know, nobody knew who he
voiceover.
was. He
Yes.
got paid in marijuana or weed, you know, for doing that. He was an unknown guy back then. We were all unknowns. Many of us are still unknowns.
You gotta
But
love the
that's right.
70s of this. Okay, 6 weeks. I know you guys touched on there was a lot of rewrites. In the van scene alone, the guy that plays the hitchhiker was telling me that, you know, he said Toby was stopping and y'all would rewrite the scene and y'all were sitting in this van and there's no AC and it's
Oh
brutally
yeah, no
hot.
AC, and he's got that cigar. He's like Eric von Stroheim. I mean, it was brutal. It was brutal, and that, you know, and then I'm watching after about 3 or 4 takes. You know, the girls, you know, would get out of the van, go into the travel trailer. They would make them, you know, fix up their hair and whatnot. So I'm watching this, and I said, they got a good thing going here. So after one of the takes, I slipped out and I go into the trailer. No sooner do I sit down, they come running over and say, Allen, there's nothing we can do for you. Get out of here. So that was it for me.
They just wanted to make sure the girls looked cute.
Yeah, the girls were good. Nothing about me. It was nothing they could do
Y'all
for me.
can sweat. You're fine.
Yeah. I
That's
just had
funny.
all this hair back then. My hair could stop a bullet back then.
So obviously, like the filming conditions were brutal, especially inside the house. Y'all had it all like blacked out, as I understand, so that it would look like night
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
while inside, and
yeah.
then no AC. And I heard a lot about the smell in the house.
Brutal.
Yeah.
I was reading on your website today earlier about the method that you did before your kill scene about wearing the blindfold and like
Yeah,
really
yeah.
getting immersed into that. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah,
Like,
we're going to set the scene up for the sun setting. So we were going to kill time. I said, well, listen, why don't you just blindfold me so then it'll just be my real reaction to seeing Gunnar. I had not seen him in costume before.
oh, okay.
So they did, you know, they blindfolded me, and, you know, I'm just kind of relaxing, but actually working myself up into a tizzy or a lather, so to speak. And then they yelled cut, and I go into the house and go in and looking at some strange stuff. And then there's the freezer, the hook, then the freezer, the pop, boom. And then comes Gunnar. I'm freaking out. And so I ran out of the house even before he was in the scene. And so Toby yelled cut, and he came over and he put his arm around me. He said, Allen, that's a great scream, but you got to wait for him to get into the frame with you with the mallet, with the cudgel.
You gotta let him kill you first.
Yeah. We had to do it several times until finally he had 2 grips get me by the belt loops behind me and pulled me down just as I'm getting smacked. And that shot I took 50 years ago, I'm still getting headaches.
Are you?
So, no, I'm kidding.
Oh.
And I wanted to say that my scream is number 8 in the all-time screams when the actor didn't know what the hell was going to happen to me.
I was trying to find that online because I guess there's a lot of different lists and stuff. I went back and I watched it, and his scream is like
I know,
feral. It's visceral.
I'm a total wuss in that.
Well, no, I mean, I feel like anybody would have reacted that way. I remember the first time seeing it because as the audience, by that point, you've already seen Leatherface kill Pam. You've seen her go on the hook, and now she's in the freezer. And she killed Kirk. And he killed Kirk already.
Right.
So you know what Jerry's walking into. And you're like, no, don't go in there. And when he comes out, it's like, that's a terrifying scene.
It is. And, you know, the thing is, after the movie was over, Gunnar and I became really good friends. You know, and I miss him to this day. And in fact, he stayed with me this summer before he moved to Maine. But he was a poet. He was a writer.
Oh,
He was just an incredibly nice guy.
I love the way you guys all talk about each other because all of y'all that I had the opportunity to meet were everyone. It's like a family. Like y'all.
I was going to say, you can also, there's a movie called My Dinner with Leatherface, and that's on, I think it's on Tubi or on YouTube. So you can see it, and all of the cast members are in it and giving our recollections.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Being with Gunnar.
Yeah.
I remember the very first time I watched this movie. I remember being about 5 years old on my parents' couch. They had told me no, I could not watch the movie under any circumstances at all whatsoever. So I pretend to fall asleep on the couch, but my grandmother, quilted me like one of those Afghans, so it had holes in it. And I rolled over and I was watching it through the holes in this Afghan. And like that movie is stuck with me, and that started my love for horror from that moment on. Everything scary, everything, all the movies, love it. So what do you think it is about Texas Chainsaw Massacre that makes it so iconic and so relatable to so many people, even this further on? What is it about Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I think, you think back of Texas in the 70s, it's just believable. It's just so believable. And you see, I mean, none of us were known, you see the sweat. It was almost like a documentary, when you
very gritty. It had a very gritty, real
and the
feel.
The kills, the sound effects, all of it is like, we caught lightning in a bottle. It's not easy to do. When this movie came out, this is 1974, my parents, and they had seen Eggshells, they didn't know what that was about. But when Chainsaw came out, they ended up taking my aunt and uncle, and they saw it in a porno theater.
Oh, back when those existed.
It was a
those were popular.
Double feature. The second feature was Debbie Does Dialysis. And when I went into the house, my mother started screaming in her native language, which was no language. She just grunted, and she started screaming for me not to go into that house. And the manager of the theater came down and almost escorted her out of the theater.
That's great.
A little tidbit there for you.
What do you think? I mean, obviously there was just like the heat and the smells and the bonding you guys had, all the weed, all the things that were happening. What is your, I guess, most like poignant memory from that 6 weeks of your life making the movie?
Well, they asked me, my favorite scene was at the gas station. When we pull in and Jim Sedow, with tremendous, comes out and says, "We got no gas." And we're looking at him like in disbelief. And so as he's approaching, and then that troll guy, the little guy comes out with the flashing soapy water. At that one of the takes, I inadvertently hit the windshield wiper, and it smashed all of the soapy water on Jim Sedow's face, and he's trying to deliver his lines, and there's soap running down his face, and Bill Vale and myself, we lost it. We just started cracking up.
Would you fill her up, please?
Got no gas here.
Damn it. You're out of gas?
My tank's empty. The transport won't be through until later this afternoon. Maybe not even until tomorrow morning.
Cracking up. And it was take after take after take. We couldn't do it. And finally, Toby really got upset, walked off the set. And I think Kim had to finish the scene. But for some reason, that's one of my favorites. It's just so bizarre.
When did y'all really realize, oh my gosh, like people are liking this?
Well,
like,
the truth is, the real massacre took place after the movie came out, because the original distributors were the mafia. So I'm collecting all these things from Variety, and I'm watching this movie, and it's going up the charts with a bullet. It beat out Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, and I said, "Gee, I cannot believe it." But I hit the brass ring. I mean, this is it for me. And then I got my first check. And see, they couldn't pay us. I mean, we got paid very little, but they offered us a percentage. And that's another thing you want to know. That, in a percentage of this, it's that pie was cut up more times. There were more hands in it than the Muppets. And so when I finally got a check, I mean, I could go to McDonald's. I said, "What's wrong with it? This picture's making millions. This movie is making millions." But none of us, it was the mafia had absconded with the money.
I imagine, were you guys ever like frustrated?
Oh,
about
sure.
that?
We were, up in arms and stuff, but it took years to get the movie back. But by that time, millions were gone.
True.
I'm thankful that people see the movie, that they like the role, that they get a kick out of, meeting me. And the fans, when we first did, my first reunion was in 2004, and Gunnar came to me and said, "Allen, they want to do a reunion, and they want to do this Comic-Con." And I was real reluctant. I said, "Who am I going to meet? Serial killers?"
What's
wannabes and
this
stuff
about?
like. Turns out these are the nicest folks. They just saw
We
me as fresh
are,
meat.
aren't we, Gwen?
I know.
Horror fans are the best.
I mean, I've met lawyers, I've met doctors, I've met all kinds of folks, and they love this genre.
I imagine you've seen a lot of different generations of fans. I mean,
Yeah,
and that's got to be interesting. This being a 1970s film, like you probably never thought that.
I'm meeting kids that are 5, 6, 7 that have seen this movie. When the movie came out, my son was 6. I just took him to just see his dad in the coming attractions. That's 50 years ago. He's still in weekly therapy. So to see these kids now, 6 and 7, that's troubling. It's very troubling.
He's lying.
Hey, I believe it because I was like I said, I was 5 watching it through the little holes in my blanket, being terrified. So.
You know what? Like what struck me, I feel like, because I was a horror fan, and I mean, I don't even remember when I really started watching scary movies. I just always liked them, and I was treated like I was weird. My stepdad thought I was very strange because I liked scary movies.
Right.
I think when I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time, what struck me was up until that point, I had only seen movies where you're dealing with a monster like Freddy or Jason, and they're like, these like, I don't know, they're superpower monsters, right? But these were like real people, a family, and
this was a family.
They're doing this. That I remember as a kid just thinking, oh my God, are there really people like that?
He says, for one of his lines, you think this is a party, it's some things you just have to do doesn't mean you're gonna like it. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. With the Weed Hacker Massacre, I met a fellow by the name of Ray Spivey. Then we got to, become good friends, and I just gave him some ideas about what my character or what possibly could happen to him, because you don't see him dying. You know what I mean? You just see him, he gets hit, and that's it. And there was a movement that Jerry lives. But anyway, he went off on a different tangent. And then we put just a lot of fun things in it. There's a lot of surprises and whatnot. And the music in the movie was written by Britton Buchanan, who I met doing a podcast like we're doing now. Oh, okay. And at the time, he was like 19. He was runner-up on The Voice. Very talented fellow. He's married now, but he wrote the music. And one is the Ballad of Chainsaw Jerry. He wrote the song originally for me, but we changed the lyrics. And then there's another song, Hammer to the Head. I mean, these are some great tunes. So
that's awesome.
That's just a bonus when you see Weed Hacker. And you can see Weed Hacker Massacre on Tubi for free, on Amazon Prime, and a bunch of other things. So
that was my next question. So if someone is struggling and they turn to horror for comfort, what would you want them to know?
If you like horror, fine, join a group, whatever. And I'm finding out that I meet people, that are much younger. It's what keeps me going.